City. Ask Dr. Ekuru Aukot.
You know, he made a statement, and he said that the one person in this country who has a sycophantic following that can cause the sort of disturbances we saw with the Mandamano's Raila Odinga, it's the word sycophant. And I wanted to ask him why he thinks people become sycophants. Well, what is it that leads to sycophancy if indeed the followers are sycophantic? Why do people get to a point where they are, because sycophancy presupposes that you're following this person without logic, without reason, and that all you do is follow. They say you follow, and no thought process beyond following actually accommodated. Why do you think we get to that stage? Why do you think such a thing, if it does exist, why does it exist?
No, I think sycophancy exists, and it's been there, and the sycophants follow the leader they think they believe in. And for me, sycophancy in this country comes because of the nature of our politics. For the longest time, there are leaders who have actually manifested themselves into society, in the eyes, nationally, to say that we are from, and they have drummed this support that we are in a region. There's also been a lot of conmanship in our politics, that because of so and so, because of community X taking over power, the rest of us are now being relegated. And I think at the risk of just being more brutal, for the longest time, the people of Luo Nyanza have been made to believe that the Kikuyus are part of their problem. Rift Valley been made to know that Kikuyus are part of their problem. So if you look at, for example, our nature of politics, the mobilization is around tribe, region, personalities that in a way sort of, for lack of a better word, represent that region and that community. And that's why you saw, for example, in the BBI, the idea was that if you accommodate, I think, 5 people in government, we have all been included. So there is an illusion from the general masses that, and people always follow a leader. And whether that leader is truthful or not, people will always follow, whether blindly or logically or whatever the case may be. But the nature of our politics, is tribal city. People will follow the leader they think is speaking a certain word to them. For example, there was a sycophantic following of William Ruto in 2022 when he came up with the narrative, hustler narrative. He was speaking to the real problems, the people with lack of means, people going to bed angry, people waking up in the morning and saying, how do I put food on the table? So the street language, the common lingua on the streets is that we are hustlers. But here we have somebody who's actually speaking our language. So they follow that man illogically. But now they've realized it was all a long con. That but prices will come down in 100 days. In this, now they realize, now a lot of them are waking up to say, well, I thought we did not have money in our coffers. So how do they spend 800 million just to buy cars? How do they establish an office of a spouse? How do they, these trips they are making? I mean, the president has made, I don't know, trips to about 10 countries since he came into office. That is a huge expenditure. He has expanded the cabinet. So now the hustlers are beginning to see, I think we're being duped. But at that time, they are following this person because he was speaking a language that they want to hear. So sycophancy is there. It's not only unique to Kenya. You will say in the United States of America, Donald Trump still has a sycophantic following. Either of racists or those people who are waiting for somebody who can actually speak the language that they've been trying to muffle. But eventually somebody like that comes, I mean, the following is there.
You've actually pointed out something that, well, it all doesn't make sense, but it points to what I was alluding to. They speak to a need.
Yes.
And that need represents a reality that these people have. Now, you may have a differing opinion on it, but there it is. Now, we look at the situation that we have in this country and the dialogue and the narratives that keep crisscrossing. A lot of the things you say, well, if you doubt it, all you need to is wake up in Kenya and look and see what's happening, and you can determine whether these things are true or not. However, the reality of the situation we have, in my view, is that a lot of the problems that we talk about, this government had absolutely nothing to do with those problems. And absolutely. They did not bring about the drought.
That's true.
They did not bring about the high cost of fuels and what have you. It's not them who brought it. If you're talking about the war in Ukraine and how it has affected everything else, they didn't bring it. They didn't bring COVID, because a lot of the economic wars we have have to do with the recovery from the COVID period, which affected the entire planet.
That's true.
Okay?
That's true.
Now, having established that many of these things were not brought about by them, we then ask ourselves, what is it that they can do and what reality do we have with regards to the economy? Now, unfortunately, we have to go by what you say, the promises they made. Now, those ones, unfortunately, are crumbling with every passing day. You don't need to look too hard. You just need to live in this country, and it becomes obvious that these things are not going to get done. That we've established. Now,
let me correct you, Kidogo.
Yes.
I don't think myself or anybody out there is actually blaming this government for the drugs and whatever. By the way, and it's also true that government is whether you did not bring those issues or not, but once you form the government and the issues are still there, we'll still look up to the government of the day.
We do.
For solutions.
Yes,
For
but you
solutions.
see, I didn't introduce the word blame. I was merely presenting it and saying this is the situation. Blame is a conversation that keeps being brought in as to who do we blame for our problems. And I'm saying, I'm not even talking of blame. I'm just saying this is the situation. This is the reality that we live with. Now, if you want to apportion blame, then ask yourself, how does blame come in? Blame comes in when you say you're going to do something and you don't. Then I have to blame you because you led me to believe that I should have certain expectations, and those expectations have been dashed. But I'm taking it further. Beyond blame, what then do we do? Because we have a situation where now we are being told the discussions we're about to have, this so-called bipartisan. By the way, it's a term that when you talk about with reference to Kenya, is a bit nonsensical. It makes a lot of sense in America where they have two major parties. So bipartisan makes a lot of sense. Bipartisan too. Here, no.
But that's why I'm suggesting.
But bipartisan in parliament makes a lot of sense to me.
No, it does not.
You wrote the constitution,
Yes.
you created a majority and minority. You actually
but they are not
divided
the
parliament
only
into
ones.
two.
They are not the only ones in parliament. Majorities and minority are not the only ones. And I agree
true.
with CT.
But the
if it was
president-
in a country like, say, UK, where you have got two dominant political parties, my person makes sense.
Dr. Aukot, if you speak about it strictly, the president was very specific. Let's have a conversation in parliament. And let's have it in a bipartisan approach.
First of all,
That makes a lot of sense.
First of all,
because parliament...
that's a misnomer. President doesn't have to direct parliament to have a conversation or a dialogue. There are already structures within our constitutional order on how parliament operates. President has no business directing parliament to have any dialogue. Members of parliament have got their rules, the rules of engagement. They know how you can bring in a motion, how you can table a statement for debate. So president has no business directing parliament. In fact, that's even a very wrong approach in my view. If the president really wanted to have a very honest dialogue about the issues that Azimio is raising, he'd be better off telling Azimio, let's meet with the people, let's talk with the stakeholders. The stakeholders of this country are not only parliamentarians alone. City, let me come back to the two issues to give you two responses. Don't excuse this government. And I'm not saying we are blaming them for all the problems we're having right now. We're not blaming them for the Ukraine war or whatever is happening. I just gave you one simple example of how the cost of living went up when the VAT on petroleum was included in 2019. So all these people cannot excuse themselves. Moses Kuria, CS for Trade, Kimani Ichung'wah were members of the Parliamentary Committee on Budget and Appropriation Committee. They passed most of borrowing. How did we get here? These people were in that committee that actually approved the borrowing and what the reason we have a huge national debt today. They are now running government.
And budget deficits.
Budget deficits and all those things, they were there. So, if you want us to apportion blame, then we can apportion to that extent. But let me also now escalate this argument further. President William Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua are not new in government. Whatever problems you want to say Kenyans are facing right now, William Samoei Ruto was a deputy deputy president of this country for 10 years. Now he is the president. So he cannot tell us that he does not know where the problem is. When they came up with a plan and they said we are going to fix this, fix that, my common sense tells me that they ought to have known, or at least they knew where the problem was. And therefore,
that was actually the argument. That we have taken a deep look into the issues and we have identified the problems. And the plan is a solution.
Exactly, they say that. So let's not excuse them, because it doesn't matter today. And I can see a lot of goal shifting. We have also seen repeatedly Rigijis saying all money was stolen by the handshake government. We emptied it. They are not even telling us, okay, how was this money stolen? Now that you have the instruments of power, at least tell us, even the 35 billion that the controller of budget was forced to release, at least tell us, where did this money go to? You can actually...
But even that story, Dr. that story of the control of budget being forced, is this not an independent body? Is this not a body that is protected by law? Is this not a body that has instruments that guarantee that you really can't be shaken? You can be threatened, maybe.
But she confessed herself and said she was coerced. So in my view, she even has no business being in office right now as we speak. She has no business. This is a self-confessed conspirator to commission of a crime. Yeah, they defrauded the people of Kenya 35 billion. So if I was Gachagua and I truly wanted to account for this money, then I will tell this lady, now you have to tell us exactly how this money left the national coffers. That way we will nail thieves of public money. Yeah, and at least we'll be putting a system where you cannot touch public funds. Over and above that.
And you cannot manipulate independent officers.
Exactly.
Actually, I'm fearful. You know, when I hear such a statement, it's like the Supreme Court coming to tell us that we made this decision because we are coerced. I'd think and say, wait a moment.
Yes.
Then why did we go through all these processes of ring fencing these positions and giving them protection in law?
But CT, it's not rocket science. I hear people talk. I mean, the other day I was listening to David Indy talk about systems. We have not put systems. What are systems without individuals with capability and ability, the capacity to implement those systems? Even if today you elected a cow to be in charge of this country, let's be very honest. You can have the most beautiful...
Do we have systems that can help that cow to govern?
Yeah, if the cow is capable or has ability to implement the system.
Beyond producing milk.
beyond producing milk. Fair enough. But, City, there's a point I really must bring back to the table.
Grass.
City, but there's another point. On a very serious note now.
Producing cow dung, yes.
Okay, laughter is very good for the soul, I guess. But listen, let's to more serious issues now. Yes, we have inherited. I like the way you have described the context. This is the issues, the global impacts on our economy and all that. Now you're in government. Let me use a simple analogy. I'm going to shop in a supermarket. I only have 150, but then I go and pick things. I fill my tray. With things that probably come up to 1,000. Am I sensible? Because that's exactly what
you can fuliza.
Even if you fuliza, maybe you could have a limit. I don't know. Maybe your fuliza is upwards of
a million shillings.
Yeah, a million shillings. It's possible. But in very simple terms, this government came and told us, okay, there are all these issues, like the ones we are heavily described, which had an impact really on whether we can actually deliver the promises or not. But then their conduct in the manner in which they are spending worries me. Yesterday I asked a question in another forum. Why does government always rent offices? Why not spend even something like 20-30 billion, purchase buildings and house ministries? Because we are spending a lot of money in these rents. The trips the president is making, enlarging the cabinet. What are the austerity measures, for example? Maybe we should ask that question. Now that we are broke, and we've been told repeatedly we are broke, then what are the austerity measures you have put in place? For me, I'll be sympathetic to this government if they demonstrate this is actually how we are trying to cushion you. But I don't see that. I could be wrong. I don't see that. I also live in this country. And I'm thinking where we are going now, CT, we are going the Sri Lanka way. Because Sri Lanka exploded when government was not able to pay their civil servants. People in the financial sector now are complaining, are saying there's so many loan defaulters. Look at the newspaper today, CT. I can see you have newspapers there. Look at the back pages, or the middle pages. You'll see a lot of auctioning of people, the advertisement to auction individuals. And the truth for the matter is nobody has the money to buy those those things from those loan defaulters. So the economy is in tatters. So what I would like to see is an explanation. And you should be worried, City, like I am, when the chief economic advisor comes on national television to say is exasperated daily by the wastefulness in government. But even more, he is worried that the wastefulness is deliberate.
That is a self-confession as far as I can hear it.
Yeah.
But I asked the question.
I think that's a truthful man who comes out and says, this is what I'm observing, okay? As an advisor, as somebody whose role is not in executing, is basically advising. I am looking and I'm saying this is what's happening. And I am telling the government, this is what's happening. But then, Ekuru, you also live in this country, okay? You heard what even the former President Uhuru, at some point, even him getting exasperated and asking, Sasa nitafanya nini? He sent officers home, told them, go home for a couple of weeks. These are all procurement officers in government. Action was taken in KRA. Those people go, they come back into office, system continues. It's like pause, we go home for Christmas, we'll come back. Play, we resume.
If we analyze...
Because it sounds like,
Because you see, Eric,
they are held captive by all these other interests. There's political interest, there's everything, every other interest.
At the end of the day, we can say political interest, political intrigues, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with the guy who is in charge of the country. And for me, he needs to crack the whip. And to be honest with you, in this country...
are assuming that they are capable of cracking the whip in the manner that you're prescribing. And is there anything that we've seen since this new government took over that shows you that capability or the willingness actually exists?
No, I've not seen. Instead, I'm just seeing aspects of trying to please political supporters and all that. And that's why for me, I'm saying, listen, for sometimes I stayed away from TV stations because I thought I've seen
give
the
them time.
Yeah,
you were saying give them time.
Yeah, I said well, give them time. Let's see what's unfolding. But now the situation is getting dire and dire, and I'm not even talking from a macro level. I'm talking about at a micro level, where even your interaction with your villagers, relatives. I mean, people are asking for basic things like I need to me a bonga point so that I can buy food. Sending me 100 bob. I mean, yes, I'm not talking about I know we are discussing at the national level, but I'm telling you, if you descend down and speak to the villagers, you will know the situation is very, very, very bad on the ground.
Dr. You are not comfortable with the bipartisan dialogue.
I'm not.
You're not comfortable with the approach that's been taken. What would you rather see? Because you all acknowledge that there's an issue to be addressed.
I think what I would like to see is some degree of firmness from the government. I see lack of courage in the current leadership of William Ruto. Because if William Ruto was courageous enough, he should not allow himself to be distracted by the threats by Azimio. From 2 points of view. Number one, you won the election, you are declared so as the winner. You are entertaining too much. I think these people are instilling fear in President Ruto. He is increasingly becoming a political slave. Yeah, these people are actually enslaving him. They are threatening him. So he's not able to focus. In my view, I think William Ruto needs to come out firmly and tell the people of Kenya, I won this election. I don't want to be distracted. This is how I'm implementing my plan. Now go a step further and demonstrate to us how you're implementing that plan. I would wish he could immediately put in some austerity measures on how we can make some savings as a country.
Like what, for
I
instance?
would rather even renegotiate our repayment loan, because I see one of the excuses they are using is that we cannot afford to default. Yeah. But nothing has stopped you from renegotiating a long-term repayment plan.
Dr.
Yes.
This conversation, it's if we go along with what you're saying, it'll be a false conversation. You know why? Everything that is done within government that involves spending is budgeted for. It's not complicated.
Absolutely.
Believe me.
Yes.
When you have a supplementary budget, it means everything we're talking about, repayment of loans, salaries, all those things. That's what budgets do. They tell you this money is going here. Now, when you budget, we have no option but to assume that all those things are taken into account. Because even these debts, they don't spring on you. They are known well in advance. And they're part of the budget. So you come about and tell us that suddenly, because we paid this debt, we don't have money. Because we paid this debt, we cannot pay salaries. And you had a supplementary budget not very long ago. You see, what you're telling us is something far worse than what we are discussing. You are telling us that you are unable to actually manage the government. You are unable to manage the money. You are unable to manage the responsibility that you have. That's what you're telling us. Now, that is far scarier to me than everything else that we're discussing here.
But it's not a figment of my imagination. It's the reality on the ground. I mean, they themselves have come out to say we don't have money. But we can also see the manner in which they're expending money that they do not have. Was there a budget for chief administrative secretaries? Was there a budget for 43 principal secretaries? Was there a budget for 27?
49, actually.
49, eh?
49.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
you see? Was there a budget for that? Even in the supplementary budget, it wasn't there. So why do you appoint people? So that's why I'm saying this government ought to be careful and to be able to demonstrate to us that, listen, this is what we inherited.
The president, in his first address to parliament, he said, I'm directing my new cabinet secretary for the National Treasury to cut back expenditure by 300 billion shillings.
Exactly.
Okay? He said it. They claim that it came to pass.
I don't think so.
So what is it that is holding them back from being able to implement austerity? Because you keep talking about austerity.
But we have to see it. We have to see it. And the first place where we have to see austerity measures is in the way government itself behaves. Now, how else will we know that this government is actually employing some austerity measures? For example, we know that they are borrowing about 10 billion every day, but there's no explanation or accountability on how that money is being spent. At the very least, come and tell us this is how we are spending this money. You know, Rigiji has said 35 billion was stolen. At least show us, demonstrate to us, this is how we recovered. We have traced this money to an account X, and we are bringing it back. We are repatriating this money back, wherever it went. We are not seeing that. Instead, we are seeing a lot of rhetorical talk. Now, the country is being chaperoned into this bipartisan dialogue, as if it will be the solution to our problem. It won't be, especially inside Parliament. And parliamentarians themselves have said, actually, Parliament is compromised.
Final question in about a minute. If President William Ruto called you today, because he has your number and you have his, if he called you right now after you finish this show and he told you, Ekuru, kuja tuongee. Ile kitu yako ya punguza mizigo, kuja to discuss.
Oh, yeah. I will meet him.
So you're against BBI, but you're okay for punguza
No,
mizigo?
no, because BBI was part of this largesse in government. Punguza mizigo was actually going to reduce the cost of governance. For example, we had said that we do not see a value of 416 members of parliament or representatives because they are gobbling about 38.8 billion Kenya shillings annually. And I drew a parallel that we people in Nairobi, we are about 6 million, we are only given 12 billion for everything, development. But 416 people are taking home 38.8 billion. I've also spoke about how we can simplify our election because our election gobbles billions annually. Punishing thieves of corruption severely. We are going to save under Punguza Mzigo 3.78 trillion Kenya shillings. Now, BBI was going to eat more into our public coffers. So yes, if William Ruto is actually serious, I am more than happy to tell him, you know what, let me even be your foot soldier.
You have the blueprint.
I have the blueprint on how we can fix this country, especially make savings. I'd say that we abolish these nominations. You know, nominated MPs, nominated senators, nominated MCAs, and we had come up with the Ward Development Fund on how we can quickly equalize this country. So yes, we have the blueprint. I mean, we can panel beat it here, kidogo na pale.
By a dialogue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, me, I would rather I go to the people, to be honest with you. I'd rather this conversation becomes national, or now we can actually cut. Because, for example, CAS, in 2 seconds, the CAS position, do you think we really needed them?
Okay. 2 seconds up.
Dr. Ekuru Aukot, leader of the Third Way Alliance political party, has been our guest.